maybe if I lived in a timeline where Trump pushed the vaccine and the right wing was talking about issuing vaccine ID cards and such, I might be a little suspicious about why it was rushed out so fast and what the health concerns were. And I can't believe I'm going down this road, but there are definitely things the general public doesn't seem fully informed about concerning where the virus originated. There's a lot of muddled messaging from Fauci, not to mention all of the contradictions coming from the GOP. Trump and the rest started this by making the coronavirus political, and then sort of shotgun blasted all these dumb accusations around some other actually relevant questions. So for example, the theory that the virus was accidentally leaked from a lab in Wuhan isn't some wild theory, but rather was muddled with this idea that it was intentionally unleashed on the world by China to make the US look bad, or that Fauci and Biden and China made a virus to conquer the world with communism or whatever. Trump made it so that you can't believe one without believing the other. And so the left took a hard turn on any idea that the virus came from a lab. The reality is that we still don't know. We're not even sure what animal this originated from, and there's a lot we need to look into. And asking these questions is good, because even if it turns out that the virus didn't come from a lab, the investigation is continuing a debate in the science community around lab safety, specifically something called gain-of-function research. Gain of function is when researchers purposefully alter a pathogen in a way that might enhance its biological function in the hopes that it will result in a breakthrough. For example, modifying the herpes virus to treat cancer. But as you can probably guess, altering a particularly dangerous virus in experimental ways could lead to it becoming a big problem if it were leaked from a lab. So there's a question of how much restriction we need to put on this type of research, lest things get out of hand and we infect an entire city with some kind of deadly virus, and next thing you know, we're building bloated zombie freaks and cloning Mila Jovovich for reasons that are pretty unclear, and then the guy from The Mummy has to sacrifice his life, but then shows back up also as a clone, and like, what are we even doing at that point? Are we trying to cure the virus, or on the side of the virus? And what the f*** is this guy? Are we supposed to be scared of him? He looks like Stifler entered the Matrix. And so yeah, because it's a risky tactic, the White House actually cut funding for gain-of-function research back in 2014. Thanks, Obama. As well as encouraged labs to stop this practice until the risks had been properly assessed. In that same year, the National Institutes of Health funded a study on the risks of coronavirus from bats, $600,000 of that funding going to the Wuhan Institute of Virology. The National Institutes of Health also contains the U.S. National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, of which Fauci is the director. This is where all of the accusations of Fauci creating the virus comes from. And so you can see it's clearly a lot more nuanced than what conspiracy theorists are saying and doesn't really point fingers at Fauci at all. But the question of whether or not this Wuhan Institute was practicing gain-of-function research and Fauci's denial that they funded this type of research exposed the fact that scientists have a very loose definition of what that is. And so perhaps there is a lot here to unravel and pick apart, despite whether or not the virus came from this lab. There's a lot to discuss in terms of how we handle viruses and what part the US government has in missteps. This is a serious, important thing to talk about. The problem is this.
But the question is, who commissioned the work? Who started the work that they were doing in that lab? And the answer, as I was reporting this Sunday on my show, comes back right here to our country, to Dr. Fauci. Dr. Fauci is the leading world proponent of a type of virus research called gain of function. The idea is to manipulate genetic information in the lab to make viruses as contagious as possible so we can learn how to fight them. It's a noble intention, but accidents happen. In 2014, Dr. Fauci commissioned work that led to that kind of manipulation in the lab that is so close to what we saw with this pandemic. That's what needs to be investigated.
What that guy is saying is so very close to being accurate. The exception being that it shifts the point from this difference of definition of gain of function and what was actually happening in the Wuhan lab to declaring that Fauci was purposefully trying to make a super virus. Fox can then take this guy's statement, and statements like it, throw it through a game of conservative telephone, and continue to fuel even more extreme conspiracy theories, and just kind of build him up as this weird monster until whatever this is.
Oh my God, one Biden voter wrote to Tony Fauci back in March. Is there anything I can do for you besides being grateful? Wash my feet with your tears, Fauci may have responded. We can't say that he did respond that way for certain. We don't have his reply.
Oh yeah, Tumbo Bummington loves those Fauci emails. It's what he and the GOP are currently using to accuse Fauci of knowingly conducting gain-of-function research, because several of his emails seem to refer to such research happening after the White House put a ban on it. However, it was later revealed that these emails were about research that was conducted before 2014. But again, Fauci has been pretty unclear, and so yeah, sure, just fire him, you know? Who cares? If that'll make people happy, but there's just not really much here in terms of a big conspiracy. And yet, it's enough for the GOP and pundits to conclude that he's lying and imply that he intentionally created the virus, and then push the idea that getting a vaccination is dangerous. And ironically, this puts up a smokescreen over any morsels of information that are actually credible, and so the left dismisses all of it, making them seem just as illogical as the right. And I'm not saying that Fauci did anything wrong, or nothing wrong, mind you. He is, after all, massive collective groan, the sexiest man alive. I'm just pointing out that this is how conspiracy theories happen. There's a level of incompetence and carelessness in our government that causes mistakes, and people like Fauci or the NIH are not immune to that. It's even possible that they funded research that could be easily defined as this gain of function. It's possible that there was a lab leak. Fauci himself isn't fully convinced the coronavirus developed naturally. It's also a matter of debate if all these risks justify that research, and it may be none of those things. It's complex and often boring questions about a big event that has happened in the world. And people don't like big events to not have big, dramatic answers. Is it more likely that several governments worked together to create a super virus that would spread amongst the population in order to convince people to not go to work and wear masks and get a vaccine to track them despite phones and other vaccines already existing, and then Fauci institutes like communism? Or do scientists study stuff, sometimes despite possible dangers, and then like a mistake is made, and then instead of trying to maintain it and develop a vaccine, a third of the country was like, no, that's communism? This is all not to mention that the government has, in the past, done some wild shit. The United States has absolutely conducted large-scale biological tests on its citizens, albeit ones they claim had no ill effects. Or, you know, then there's the ones that absolutely had ill effects. Or the testing of soldiers, or just the overall disregard for veterans, or really anyone putting their life on the line. There's a reason so many of these conspiracy militia people are veterans, because they tend to have very good reasons to think the government is out to them. Combine all of that with a person who just plain hates Biden. And like the way we were theorizing that Trump could use COVID to overstep his authority, people are feeling the same anxiety now on the other side. And things like vaccine passports can easily be seen and spun as a slippery slope to fascism. So while Biden has insisted that there won't be such things, it's important for everyone to be very careful about allowing passports to become a reality. And one really good way to prevent that is to get vaccinated, please. Wear a mask, do the stuff, so that perhaps we can get past this virus. Don't let the situation get so dire that it justifies extreme measures by our government, you know? Hey, thanks for watching that clip. Here's the evergreen end plate to ask you to like and subscribe. It's any day of the year where you are.